Hello, good morning, guys. This is Shantal Myers with ETHOSystems. I will be the presenter today for our year-end payroll close and W2 preparation class. So if you didn't sign up for year-end payroll close and W2 preparation class, then you're in the wrong class. Next week, I will be holding general ledger and 1099 preparation, the same on Tuesday at the same time next week. I believe it's the 20th. I'll give just a few more minutes for other people to join in. We have about 50 attendees and it looks like only half have joined. Like I said, I'll just give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get started. I don't want to waste anybody's time. We do have, 1 hour class, so we have a short amount of time to cover a lot of information. So just a few more minutes. I also want to mention that everybody is on mute as they enter the class. And so if you need to ask a question, you can go ahead and unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat. And I'm handling this meeting myself, so I will be trying to watch the chat as well and see if there's any questions that pop up. Last thing, I did put a handout in the handouts area of the meeting. It is the PowerPoint presentation that we will be going through today. I won't necessarily be showing the PowerPoint presentation because you guys will be seeing my screen with Sage on it. All right, let's go ahead and get started. As I stated, we will be covering the year-end payroll close process and W2 preparation. If you are outsourcing your payroll to a third-party processor and you process payroll in Sage, recording those same transactions, you still want to participate in this meeting, and because you have to go through the close process as well as if you were processing payroll in Sage. So we will be covering today, as I stated, going through the agenda here, multi-year payroll processing option that's now available in the newest version of Sage. So you must be on version 24.2 to take advantage of the multi-year payroll option. We'll be going through that process a little bit, going through this class. We'll also talk about the process for archiving payroll. So that is something, if you've been in Sage for a while, you probably have already archived payroll before. That is still the same process, whether you go through the close, the new option, or not. We will walk through that though for the new users. We'll walk through how to process W2s in Sage, whether you're printing them out yourself or taking advantage of the Atrix e-file. Then we'll walk through how to advance to the next fiscal year, and then we'll talk about available resources for you guys, whatever options are out there, so that you guys can have a checklist and things like that as you go through this process. One last important detail is that you do need to have access to the database administration tool in order to close, or not close, but archive, right? So if you're going to archive your payroll, you need access to the database administration tool. I know in some instances, your IT or whomever is maintaining your Sage server may have that locked down. You would need to get access to that tool in order to archive payroll. And then there will be a new update coming out before year end that has the 2023 tax tables. I don't know the exact date of that release, but it will be coming out. You definitely want to update your system to the newest, using that new update before you process your first payroll for 2023. So there's a lot of questions surrounding, do I close payroll or do I archive payroll? And if I close, what are the pros and cons? And if I archive, what are the pros and cons? So again, in the newest version of Sage 24.2, we've all been waiting for it forever. We want to be able to just close payroll without having to archive it. And now that's an option for us. We'll go through that. So one of the pros is that it's a very easy and convenient tool now available within Sage 100 Contractor. We can simply just close payroll without archiving. The payroll records for that prior year remain in your current database. So, it's great for workman's comp audit purposes. You can run reports for multiple years, or most of the time our workman's comp periods aren't calendar year. So some, in the past, we'd had to pull the data out of our current system and then, for part of it, and then log into our archive company to pull the rest of it. If you go through the close process and not archive, everything is available in one system, similar to the general ledger. Another pro is that you can fix payroll for prior years in the existing database. Prior to that, you weren't able to do that. You had to log into your archive company and correct the payroll if something was found. Another pro is that W2s and the fourth quarter reporting can be done in that exact same database if you use it, if you go through the close process. Just some cons that I thought about, that it does increase potentially the size of your database and might slow down the system depending on how many payroll records you have. Another con is that you cannot remove those do not use payroll calculations that you may have marked, do not use during the year. You would not be able to remove those if you closed payroll and didn't archive. However, you can delete them from the employee's record themselves in 521 if they haven't been used in payroll for the current year. So those are, just some general, from what I've read. I've gone through the process myself, obviously not with live data, and those are kind of some of the pros and cons that I've found. As far as archiving, if you went through the archiving process, that, if you've been in Sage again for multiple years, you've already gone through this process. That, again, archiving process doesn't change. Some companies are choosing not to close payroll. They're actually choosing not even to update to 24.2. They're staying on earlier versions, and so the close process is not even available to them. So they do have to archive because close is not available if you stay on an earlier version of Sage. So the pros and cons. So if pro for archiving is that all the payroll records are removed from your current system and the new database is created, thus freeing up space. You can also add and remove, or excuse me, not add, but remove or delete unwanted employees themselves, in the terminated, if they're a terminated employee in that status, you can remove them from the database if you archive and their related records. You also would be able to remove those DNU payroll calculations that we talked about earlier if you did archive. And then a con is, you have your databases in two different systems, so you have to log out and go into the archive to process or to access prior year records and reports. You also would have to, log into the archive database to process your W2s and your fourth quarter reports in your archive database. And the con is that, the archive process sometimes is a lengthy process depending on the size of your database and how much payroll you have. It could take a while to archive your payroll. So those are just kind of the, some of the pros and cons. You need to decide, though, are we going to close or are we going to archive? If you close payroll in your current database, you still can archive, at a later date. You just don't have to do it right away. You can have as many years for payroll open now as you'd like, just like in the general ledger, you can have, 4 or 5 years open. That is now available with payroll as well in the 24.2 or later versions. So as far as preparation is concerned, and actually before I move on to the preparation part, does anybody have any questions? I haven't seen anything pop up in chat, but I just want to make sure that everybody understands kind of like, there are two options now, close and archive. If you close payroll, you still have the ability to archive whenever you want to archive that oldest year of payroll. Okay, I don't see any questions pop up in chat. So we'll move on to the preparation of payroll close. That process is still, in my opinion, still the same. To prepare to close or to prepare to archive, they're both the same. So you must close payroll, meaning you must complete your 2022 payroll prior to moving into 2023 payroll. You have to complete it and compute time cards. So that timing is very important. So Just, kind of look at the calendar, figure out when your last payroll of 2022 is, and then when are we going to close and or archive, then we install our update, then we move on to 2023 payroll. You want to make sure that you've printed your final bonus checks in the 2022 calendar year. The owner OHID check needs to be printed as well in that 2022. You can look at KB Article 22059 in order to see how to do that. And when I say KB Article 22059, what I'm talking about is if in the SAGE database, you go to Home and Resources, SAGE Support Knowledge Base. So KB stands for Knowledge Base. Gonna pull up the knowledge base, and I said 22059. So you can just type in 22059 and hit enter. And now it gives you the instruction for displaying the owner's health insurance benefits on the W2. It walks you through exactly how to do that. So if that's something that your company has to do, make that adjustment for the owner's health insurance benefit and have that reported on the W2, that's exactly how you would do that using this KB article. Health insurance reporting is in this article, and then the HAS contribution is in this article. So go ahead and refer to those to make those final year-end adjustments to the W2s. I definitely recommend creating a secure folder to house all your close reports. So all of your, 941 reports, 940, all of those closing reports, which we'll walk through kind of a list of recommended reports to run in the system. Make sure you, put that in a secure folder so that only you have access to that information. Are you guys going to be e-filing with Atrix for your W2s and even your, your 941s? You can register for e-filing using this link. If not, you would need to order your forms. I definitely would recommend ordering them now. There is a KB article 17395 that actually walks you through exactly what forms to order for W2s and 1099s. So here, this is a table of information. It tells you what forms to order to be able to print them out in Sage. If your employees get electronic W2s, you want to make sure that you have the consent on file. And so what does that mean in 541? There is an electronic W2 consent here that you can send to your employees. You can select the employees. Here's my list. And then I can send them the W2 consent. They can then sign it and authorize us or allow us to be able to send them their W2 electronically. Once you get that back in the 521, you're going to want to mark on their employee record that they are consenting to an electronic W2. Right here, consent for electronic W2. So if that's on file, definitely check that box so that when you go to process W2s, the system will pick that up and send that electronically. You want to review and complete the setup of all the requirements for the Affordable Health Care Act. If you're over 50 employees, you may be subject to the Affordable Health Care Act, where you have to submit additional forms on the health plan. There's a KB article and videos that walk you through exactly that process. Most of the time, if you have a third-party, company that's administering your plan, they will do that for you. So I definitely would double check with them first before you go through the process yourself. I haven't heard of a company that does not have their administrator do that for them. But if you are required to do it, maybe you're self-insured, watch the videos, learn how to do that there. If you still have questions, then you can reach out to your Sage 100 consultant, or you can contact ETHOSystems and they can assign you a consultant to help. You want to ensure that all your payroll calculations are set up properly to report on the W2 if applicable. So what does that mean? In the payroll setup screen, here are W2 options. So, if there's a retirement plan, if there's a third-party sick pay option here, you want to check those boxes. Also, I'm not going to save that. In payroll management, payroll calculations, if I pull up a calculation, let's do it for the 401k. 401k, employee. So down here in the bottom right corner of your payroll calculations is a W2 box with a code, or the W2 box that we want the code to go into. So you definitely want to make sure your payroll calculations are set up to properly report on the W2s if you're going to be sending those out of Sage. If you have any questions about codes, you also can go to help about this window right from the payroll calculation. We can type W2 box. Oops. So here about W2 box and W2 code and payroll calculations. And then here is a list of all of the codes that became effective. So you can definitely reference the help option there to walk you through those codes. You definitely want to make sure that before you process your W2s that those are all set up. You also want to make sure that, again, you've finalized, your 2022 payroll and print and post all the payroll checks for that calendar year. And again, we're talking about preparation for close or preparation even for archiving. The process is still the same. Make sure you review and update your employee statuses. So that means that just make sure that in 521, your status is up here for your employees, whether they're current, on leave, quit, those type of things are updated properly, especially if you're archiving, because you want to make sure you can remove those records. If they are quit, laid off, terminated, or deceased, and you archive, Sage will ask you if you wanted to remove those records from your existing database. And then you also want to make sure that your company information in 7.1 is correct. So 7.1 is the utilities company information. If something changed over the year, maybe your address, something like that, you want to make sure that this is updated with the most accurate information. Because when you complete your tax forms in Sage, it's going to pull the data housed in the screen for your company name, your company address, your federal tax ID number, those type of things. Moving on through the preparation, we're still in preparation to close. Definitely recommend you run a payroll audit, and you should be doing that today anyways, after every payroll. If you have any errors, you can click repair to resolve. Sometimes they do resolve with a repair. If the errors are present, you can contact your Sage consultant, or you can, try to figure it out on your own using the knowledge base. But it's definitely recommended that you correct any issues as you have to go back to your active company. If you can't archive if you have those outstanding audit errors. So if you haven't been auditing your payroll, what I'm talking about is in 5.3.7 payroll audit. Definitely a recommended process after every single payroll, including if you're using a third-party company, I still would run a payroll audit. So run a payroll audit. It is just going to validate the payroll records against the quarter totals as is stated in the yellow. You click audit. And this is saying no audit errors found. That's great, but there's uncomputed and unposted payroll. It'll give you all of the audit errors here if there were some, and you can view the audit report by clicking yes. Since I have uncomputed and unposted payroll, before I close, I definitely want to fix these and find out what they are, because they may be affecting somebody's W-2. If I don't post them, they're not going to be, a posted record and part of the W-2. So I'm not going to view my audit report because I can just go to 5.2.2 and look at what the issue is. But before I do, this is where you can click repair. So once you audit, if there are errors, you can click repair, and sometimes it will repair the audit errors. I don't have any audit errors. I just had those uncomputed, unposted payroll records, so it's not going to fix anything. I actually have to go fix these. And how do I do that? I'm going to go to 522, which is where payroll is housed, or the records are. And it said I had 2 unposted and 24 uncomputed. So I'm going to go to open. So this must be my 24 records that are not computed. So somebody left this in an open status, meaning, you know, from July, and I'm in December. So this isn't even impacting my GL. I mean, I probably would have figured this out because I will be running my audit after every payroll. And I will, you know, if these checks cleared the bank, I wouldn't be able to reconcile. So let's go ahead and fix these. I'm just going to go ahead and in my payroll process here, I am going to compute payroll because they haven't been computed. It's just giving me a warning that the maxes are incorrect because I'm in a test environment. So I'm going to do a final compute. I should have just went there first. So I'm final computing the payroll because I've already validated the records. Somehow somebody just made a journal entry, I guess, to reconcile the bank. After I final computed, I want to print the payroll checks. Right? They would have already been printed, but somebody must have missed this step. Put in my payroll bank account. And that was my check date. I'm going to assign all my checks. I'm good to go. And now I can post payroll to the GL. "26 records will be posted," right? 26. That probably wasn't a good idea. Let's see what happened. So no items to complete or to report on the audit is complete. So now I have a clean record, clean audit record. If you don't have a clean audit record, if you're running that as we're doing this class, you definitely want to have a clean audit record before you close or before you archive. So back to our preparation. So once your audit is clean, you're going to want to run these payroll reports. These are quarterly, you know, federal tax reports, year-to-date earnings, those type of reports. Save them in that folder that we were talking about, that secured folder. And then you're going to want to, if you're going to audit, archive, excuse me, you're going to want to perform a records count. And the reason why we want to do that is because we're actually going to create a new database, or the system will create a new database with your payroll records. So if we perform a record count, and how we do that is go to 522 and we go to File, Count. 266 records found. So we want to write this number down and keep that number handy, because after we archive, we want to go into the archive database, run that exact same count, and make sure that it says 266. Because we want to make sure that all of the records, you know, that were in our live environment are now moved over and archived. So we want to make sure they match, just as a double check. If they are not the same, luckily for us, we took a backup, or we will take a backup before we archive. So then we can always restore our backup and go through the process again. I actually have never seen that happen in my 5 years of consulting and 10 years as a user. I've never seen that happen where it's off, but not saying that it couldn't happen. Okay, so take a records count before you archive, and then run your payroll totals report, the 51241 report, again as a double check if you're going to archive, so that you can run that report before and then in your archive database to make sure that the dollars moved over it correctly. We want to know the records moved over correctly, the number of records, and the dollars, the total. So you're going to compare them. So that is, everything that we need to do to prepare to close. Whether we're closing or archiving, we should be walking through all of these steps before we close payroll or before we archive payroll. Any questions about preparing? Amy is saying, sad my question didn't show. What was your question? You can unmute yourself and ask. All right. Oh, Amy says, can we close example 2021 in 2023? So if you're asking about close, you have to close the years in order. Oh, archive. Okay. So yeah, if you are in 2023 and you've closed 2021, which you didn't because you had to have archived because it wasn't available then, but say we are in 2024 and you didn't close or archive 2022, you can definitely then go archive it. You can archive the oldest year. Oh, it won't let you unmute. That's weird. So don't do the update until the last payroll is in, is what Erin is asking. That is correct. So you will complete in your system. Well, let me take that back. Just to make sure we're talking about the correct update. So if you have not updated to 24.2, you're not able to close the payroll. You have to archive. So you definitely want to update to 24.2 if you want to take advantage of closing. So that is number one. Number two is Sage will send out another update that will include 2023 tax tables. You can read the release notes once it comes out. I haven't seen it come out yet, but you'll be able to read the release notes and it will tell you in the release notes to make sure you complete 2022 payroll in Sage. Then you install the update to update the tax tables. Then you can move on to 2023 payroll. Did that answer your question, Erin? Kind of. I mean, you know, 24.2, if you're not there yet in your system, and how you can check if you don't know is you can go to Home and Resources, about Sage 100 Contractor, and right here it tells you what version of Sage you're in. So as long as it says 24.2, you have the ability to close payroll. That is an option for you as opposed to archiving. There will be another update coming out from Sage that's not available yet. That will include 2023 tax tables. So once that comes out, you don't want to install that update. I don't know what version it's going to be. It'll still say 24.2, but these numbers will change. You don't want to install that update until you've completed your 2022 payroll processing, because it's going to update the tax tables. So 24.2, I need to install regardless. That's what Erin's asking. No, you don't need to install that if you don't want to take advantage of the close option. I would recommend it. There are some consultants I know that are out there that are not, that are, you know, leaving it up to users. But I mean, as a company, ETHOSystems, I mean, we've even put out a newsletter that said definitely update as soon as you can to take advantage of being able to close. Yes, you can install the update to, you can install your system to 24.2 for sure right now. I would recommend it. Definitely. Because you're going to see how easy closing payroll is, which it never used to be, you know, this easy. So now that we've talked about preparing the system for close, you know, we've ran all of our reports, we've put in our year-end adjustments, we've ran, you know, made sure everybody, you know, the statuses are correct, things like that. We're ready to go. Our next step is to actually, you know, close payroll. We're going to walk through the process of closing payroll. If you're following along on the PowerPoint presentation, I am in, where am I? I am on slide number 6. So the header says new option for payroll close process, multi-year payroll. The PowerPoint presentation is in the attachments. Okay. So the payroll process gives the users an option to close payroll again without archiving. You don't have to archive. It will reset your 522 payroll records to, you know, they're still going to be in here. We will be able to use this gray display lookup window. Once we close payroll for our current year, up here in the area where I'm circling will be a drop-down box that will allow us to toggle between years. Do I want to look at all records or do I want to look at current year records? So you'll see that we'll come back into this screen after we close. There's going to be a button here or a drop-down list. It's not available yet because we haven't closed. Also in the employee records, 521, once we close, in the calculations tab, your quarter information in the calculations tab are going to be zeroed out. Year-to-date information is going to be zeroed out during our close process. Everything will remain in the database. It basically separates it and saves it in your database, but your current year information or the current year payroll 2023 will now be available after we, you know, to be able to enter the data after we do the close. Some of the reporting in Sage that I found will then have check boxes to include prior year payrolls. I'll show you that after we close. If you have to correct anything after you close, the year on the check date, so when you run a check in 522, the year in the check date will determine what database it's going into. I mean, it's the same database, but what information, you know, what year that payroll record is affecting. Because after you close, you can still input 2022 transactions in this screen by using a check date with 2022. I know it sounds like it's hard to compartmentalize it because it's never been available to us. So it's something new and kind of scary, but it's, you know, it's awesome in my opinion. So you can edit, add void payroll checks in the closed year immediately preceding your current year payroll. So that means any payroll records with a check date older than that are read only. So for example, if you've closed 2021 and 2022 and your current year is 2023, you can only make changes and add records in 2022 and 2023. The records in 2021 become read only and you can't change them. At least they're still in one database. I'm just going to check the question box, I think. Make sure that okay, I've answered everything there. All right, so let's move on to the process. So when payroll is complete, again, I'll probably repeat that like 4 times or 4 more times. When payroll is complete for the calendar year, so for 2022, you have a clean audit, you've gone through all of your steps for preparation. You're going to log in with administrative rights. So down here in the bottom left corner, it tells you what company you're logged into, you know, and then with administrative rights, you do not have to be in exclusively to close payroll, which is very strange, but you don't have to be. You only have to have administrative rights to close payroll. So you're going to go to 538 and close the payroll year. Double click. So you need to close the payroll year prior to computing payroll records that will be paid in the next year. So there's a key word, compute. What does that mean? You can still enter 2023 records in an open status prior to closing. So they can be in an open status, they just can't be computed before you do this. There's also a year-end guide here that will walk you through the process. Definitely click on that, print it, read through the process. I've kind of summarized it for you in this call and in the PowerPoint presentation, but it doesn't hurt to read the Q&As in case you have more questions in that year-end guide. Simply, all you have to do is click Close Payroll. You're about to close payroll for the calendar year. Do you want to continue? Yes. Payroll closing complete. Wow, see how easy that is? Now you can process payroll for 2023. Reminder, be sure to update payroll calculations and employees with new rates for the maxes for 2023. So before, when we archived, we would also have to update our payroll calculations. So nothing about that changes. We still will have to go update those payroll calculations, and I'll tell you what I'm talking about. This is outside of the Sage update. So we've closed the payroll year. We're getting ready to process 2023. This is the time that you get the update from Sage with the 2023 tax tables and you install it. You also are going to want to go into your payroll calculations, and if you have any adjusting to maxes, so default max, if that has changed for 2023, you're going to want to update it. In the PowerPoint presentation, you can look at this link, irs.gov, and look up the maximums for the new year and plug those into your database. You would go to default max, you would type in the new default max rate and go up to options, update employees, and then you can update the max only if that's all you changed. And then all employees with this calculation, because everybody has Social Security. You also could do, if you're updating 401k, maxes, things like that, you're going to want to use current employees with this calculation. If you did all employees on a 401k, then it's going to push that calculation out to all your employees, and maybe not everybody participates in the plan. So you would save it, push it out. You also are going to want to adjust your vacation sick accruals on your employees. So if you guys are a company, if you all utilize the sick available here, or the sick vacation accrual, let's find somebody. The system will clear out. Here we go. So what it does is it takes the carry forward for the year and puts it up into available. So if in the new year the employee gets 40 more hours, they're going to carry forward 6.2. I don't want to say 40 hours on sick. Let's say 40 hours on vacation. You're going to want to add 40 hours plus their carry forward. So you're going to have to update those. If you have the accrual set, then you wouldn't have to update it. Sage will just automatically account for that for you as the year goes along and payroll is processed. So any questions so far about updating after you have closed payroll? Okay. So as I stated, we're going to go into 522 now. if we use the gray display lookup window to show our records, there are no records in any of the statuses. That's all statuses for the current year. If I wanted to see for prior year or all of them that I have in my existing database, I can click all, and here they all are. So everything remains in the database if you just close and not archive. In the payroll here, you're going to see checks for multiple years if you close and everything is all in one database. There are some reports, as I stated, that will have a checkbox for multi-year. So like 51881, include prior years. So you check the box to include the years that are in the database, right? If you want to include them on your reports. Some other reports have check dates. So, there is not a box because you can simply just type in the date, the multi-year here. So great for, again, for workman's comp reporting because you don't have to go into a different database. So I have a question coming in. What is the benefit of laid off, terminated, and quit? At this particular point that we've closed, the benefit is, just tracking the status. You could run reports, see if somebody was laid off or terminated, or if they quit, right? If somebody quit, you might not want to, hire them back, those type of things. But the benefit in archiving is that you can remove their payroll records from your existing database, and then they would simply be housed in the archive and not in your current company. So somebody asked, if our payroll period is December 25th through December 31st and the check date is January 7th, does that get posted into 2023 or 2022? So the answer to that is the check date is always driving where that where the expense gets posted, if you will, and or the liability. Looking at it from the IRS's standpoint, or from their perspective, the check date is what drives everything. So January 7th payroll is going to be in 2023. So even though it's a December payroll, you can put it in Sage in an open status and then go through close, update the system with the new tax tables, and then be able to compute it at that point. But that is a 2023 payroll. Did that answer your question, John? Cool. And then Cindy, was that okay? The answer to the benefit of laid off, terminated, or quit, or do you need me to further elaborate? Okay, cool. Thank you. Okay, again, where we're at in the process is we've closed 2022 payroll, closed it in the system. We have received our update from Sage. We've already updated the system with the new tax tables. We've updated our, our payroll calculations. We've updated the employees' year-to-date sick and vacation. If they have, additional hours being added, we go through that process. Now we're ready to enter in 2023 transactions in the new company, or not in the new company, but in your existing database. You can just simply start processing 2023. You definitely can archive at any point you want. And we are going to go through the archiving process because, as I stated, there are some companies that are not going to be comfortable with this close process. They want to continue status quo. They want to archive right away and not just close. So we are going to go through that process today, and W2s. Somebody has a question. How do we change an hourly employee to salary? Sure. So in their employee record, 521, in the compensation tab here, their pay classification should have been hourly. You switch it to salary, and then you remove the hourly rates, and you're going to put one pay period of their salary here. So the salary for one pay period. So if it's $12.50 per week that they get paid, you're going to put $12.50. You don't want to have hourly and salary rate in here in this table, because the system will look at that and pay them, double. So you definitely just want to have either the salary and have this match, or the hourly. So it's as simple as that. If I was to save that, it's giving me a notification saying that my wage rate maxes were not correct in Social Security and Medicare. But this raise history button here will keep track of any changes made to anybody's pay automatically. If you didn't know that, Sage will keep track automatically. If you're new to Sage, you can go back and add your history in here. But as you change those rates in Sage, it will keep track of the raise history down here in this raise history. Did that answer your question, Ellie? I had another question come in. Do we have to do a payroll archive, or can we just close out the year? Absolutely, you can just close out the payroll year just as we have, and you can continue with a 2023 payroll without archiving in the new version of Sage, the 24.2, as long as you're there and you have this as an option. Prior to 24.2, this is still an option, but when you click on it, it advises you or takes you to the database administration tool to archive. If you're in the newest version, this will take you to the process that we just went through. I forgot to mention that when you do close a payroll, you can't undo. It is done. So you definitely want to make a backup of your company before you close payroll, before you go to 538. And that actually is in my notes in the PowerPoint presentation. Slide number 7 talks about the multi-year payroll close process. And step number 2 is to back up the company. How do we back up the company? You can go into that database administration tool that is on your Sage server. It looks like this. Go to Tune Up, Backup, Restore, Backup Companies, and then you're going to find your company and you're going to click Create Backup. And then it will create a backup of the company. Once the backup is complete, here in this green area in the bottom left corner of the screen, it will tell you that the backup is complete, just like that. And then you definitely want to go, and then that's when you come back into Sage and go to 538 to close your payroll. But if you accidentally, did that without backing up, you can't undo what you did. So again, as I stated, if all you wanted to do was close payroll and then, begin with 2023, absolutely go ahead, do that. Make sure you update with the new tax tables, update your calculations. And then from this database, you're then able to file your W2s. And you're also able to run your fourth quarter tax reports out of this system. There is no toggling to an archive because you did not archive. Okay, so for those of you that still want to archive, we are going to go through that process of archiving right now. So archiving is done in the database administration tool, not within Sage 100 Contractor. You also have to have exclusive access to the system. What that means is that nobody can be in. So I'm going to close Sage. And I'm in the database administration tool. This is housed on your server. You're going to go to Archive Company Data, Archive Oldest Payroll Year. This used to say in the old version of Sage, Archive Payroll, because we only had an option to archive. That close payroll wasn't an option. Within Archive Oldest Payroll Year, you also have another opportunity to print that year-end guide. If you click on that, it's going to take you to the year-end guide, walk you through the process, tell you exactly, how to do everything that we've gone through. If you don't feel comfortable with any of it, even, I'm going to send you this recording, you're going to have the PowerPoint, but still, there are some companies who are like, you know what, I just need somebody to watch me and walk me through it. Definitely reach out to your Sage 100 contractor consultant, whoever that may be. If you don't have a consultant, you can contact ETHOSystems and they will assign somebody to you to assist in the process. So again, we're going to go to archive oldest payroll year. We're going to select the company to archive. And I did want to mention in my notes, you want to create a backup before you do this. Anything that you're doing, you're going to want to create a backup. In my notes, the first thing that says is create a backup of your company. We just talked about it. You're going to use the backup companies, and you'll back it up first, and then you're going to go to archive oldest payroll year. And the reason why we want to create a backup is just in case something happens during the process, we have a power outage, you don't want to lose that data. So if you have a backup, it's very easy to restore and you're back to step one. No big deal. So archiving, again, you can do it at any point in time if you use that close option. If you decide to bypass the close option, you don't want to close, you want to archive, which is the old way of doing it, you absolutely can. There are just some specific things that you have to keep in mind, is that you must archive payroll before you process 2023. And current year 2022 should be complete, payroll should be complete. You should still go through those preparation steps, and then you have to archive. You'll have to go through this process. Going through this process separates the databases out. Basically, it's going to take an exact screenshot or an exact duplicate or copy of your 2022 database and extract all the 2022 payroll and create an archive database for you. And everything that is remaining in your company will be less all of the 2022 payroll, and we'll go through that process. So we're going to go to archive oldest payroll year. We will select the company. This is my oldest year that I have available, and this says this is going to remove the payroll data from the books and place it in an archive company, as I just talked about. You're going to want to name the payroll archive company something that is the same every year. I definitely recommend that you have, payroll in the name of the company name and the year, because you also will be archiving your general ledger for specific years, and you want to be able to look at the payroll and the general ledger archives specifically, and you should be labeling them the same. So for instance, like year end 2022 payroll archive, if I can spell it correctly. So the next year you're going to want to put, year end 2023 payroll archive. So that kind of like keeps them together in your archive company list. And you may want to name your general ledger, GL, so that it all is consistent and uniform. So nobody can be in Sage when you're doing this, so everybody has to be out. The payroll archive and the general ledger archive are completely different processes. The oldest archive oldest fiscal year GL is in this option, and this one is specific to payroll. We'll cover GL next week in that process next week. But today, again, we're talking about oldest archive, the oldest payroll year. So here you can check the boxes. This is where the benefit comes in when you're archiving. If you have people that are, in the status of laid off, quit, terminated, or deceased, you can tell the system to remove those records from the system, your current system, and they will simply be housed in your archive company. I had a question come in. If you choose to not archive 2022 now, you have your payroll in two different places. Since your prior years are already archived, why would you want to do this other than just to see it? So if you choose not to archive 2022 now, the payroll won't be in two different places. It will be in one database. It'll all be in that 2023 database. that one database. There's not going to be an archive company if you choose not to archive it. So the benefit of that, I mean, there's a lot of benefits, and they're in the PowerPoint presentation, the pros. It's all in one place. You don't no longer have to log out and log into an archive database to view those 2022 records. So there may be times when you have a, like I said, a workman's comp audit that covers 2 different payroll years. If we don't archive, we can run the report all in one database. You don't have to log out, log into your archive, pull half of the report, and then in your live environment, pull the other half of the report and merge them together for the auditor. It's now in one complete database. Does that make sense, Patrice? Okay. Like I said, it's up to you and your team on what you want to do. It's just an option now to close as opposed to archive. Some people will take advantage of it. Some people won't. Some people will still continue to archive right away, which is absolutely fine. Sage has now just given us the ability to close payroll and continue on because it's a very quick process, very simple, everything all in one place. So back to archiving. You can archive at any time. So if you decide to close and then, 6 months down the road in June of 2023, you're like, you know what, let me archive. I don't need the records anymore for payroll 2022. Let me archive it. You can do that in June of 2023. You can do this at any time you want. You're going to archive the oldest year for payroll, just like you do on the general ledger. That could be done at any time. So again, you're going to select the records or the employees in which you want to have removed in these specific statuses. Or you can check the box that says approve each employee's removal. So then every time, it goes to, it'll bring up the employee's name. Do you want to remove? Do you want to remove? Do you want to remove? You're going to say yes or no. So whatever you want to do there. I had another question come in. How many years can be closed and not archived? As many as you want. Just like the general ledger. So it's up to you as a team. You can have 10 years open. Not that I'm recommending that. Your system would probably be very slow, but you can. So we're archiving. We've checked these boxes. We want to remove laid off, terminated, deceased, and we're going to click Create Archive. Payroll records for the calendar year of 2022 are going to be moved, right, to a new database and deleted from the current year. Do I want to continue? Yes. So here is going to give us a status. It's going to happen very quickly for me because I don't have hardly any records in the system. For you guys, that have a lot of employees, a lot of transactions, it may take, I've seen it take an hour or more, depending on how many transactions you have. So what's happening right now, like I said, is the 2022 year records are being archived. A new database is created. All of the quarter and year totals are being zeroed out in an active company, in preparation for the 2023 payroll. And this process is a wizard, so it's going to walk you through step by step and exactly what to do. So it's a little scary because but you've already taken a backup, right? So if anything happens, you definitely can restore your backup. When this process is complete, we're going to be able to go into Sage, into the archive databases, and see the archive company from our company list. We're going to want to make sure there's 266 records, right? Just to double check to make sure that they tie out. And then we're going to want to tie the report, that totals report that we ran earlier, which we didn't, but it's in your notes to do, the 51241 report. We want to compare that report to our archive database. So it's backing up. During the process, it creates another backup. So you've created a backup manually, and then it creates another backup. So while this is running, does anybody have any questions? We're kind of running out of time, right? The call's supposed to be over right now. Payroll archiving is complete, and I am recording a call, so if anybody needs to drop off, there's going to be an email that's sent out with the recording and the PowerPoint presentation, or you guys already have that. So that will be distributed after the call. So if you need to drop off, and I do apologize for running late, this went a little bit longer than I anticipated because we still have to go through our W2 process. So the payroll archiving is complete here. It's telling us that it's done. So we no longer need, this database administration tool open. I'm going to log back into Sage. It tells me down here also no employee records were removed. So of those employee records that I said I wanted removed, none of them were removed. And why would that be? If there is an employee that has a linked transaction to, say, a job that's still open, or we paid them, or that's pretty much it, actually. If they have an open transaction because you haven't archived your GL, you're not going to be able to remove their records. They will still be stuck in the database until you archive your GL. So I'm going to log back into Sage. So these are our active companies over here. And then this is our archive database. So I'm going to click Show Archive, and notice here's my archive, the year-end 2022 archive. I am going to open it. If you did not close and you simply archived, this will be the database in which you run your W4s from and your fourth quarter reports. If you did not close and you just archived, this will be where you run your reports from. So I'm going to go to 522. This is going to keep popping up telling me, just a reminder, you're in your archive company, not inactive. You can turn it off if you want, but it will keep popping up just to remind you because you don't want to make changes to an archive database. This is what it tells you to do. And notice the background is also red, telling the user you're in an archive database. So I went to File Count, and here's my 266 records. So I know that everything got moved over. I also would just want to verify by running that 51241 report, which is the payroll totals report. I would want to run that to the screen and compare to the one I printed before I archive, just making sure the numbers tie out to validate that, again, everything just got moved over without error. You also may want to think about in the archive database, if when you archive, to update the security. So in 722, I would probably remove other users that don't need access to this company or the archive, so they don't accidentally jump in and make changes to it, things like that. I'm just reading my PowerPoint, making sure that I've covered everything. We've already done our archive. So once you've archived, as I stated, this would then be the database. If you did not close, it would be the database where you're going to run your reports and your W2s. We're going to go back to our live environment now. Since I've archived, if I go to payroll records, there's nothing here for prior year because I removed everything. I can no longer see any transactions in here for prior years because I've archived. I can't run any reports for prior years in this database because I archived. So if you chose not to close and you chose to archive, this is the time that you're going to want to install the Sage update with the new tax tables. So you would install the update with the tax tables, and you would also go through the other process of updating your calculations with the new maximums, making sure that everything is accurate there. You're going to want to update those employee records with the sick and vacation accruals. So again, that's if you chose to not close and you chose to archive, you still kind of have to go through that same process of updating the system and preparing the system for the 2023 close, or payroll, to 2023 payroll. Another thing you can do after you archive if you chose not to close and you chose to archive, is in the payroll management, payroll calculations, you now can remove those ones that have do not use. So if you had DNUs, those payroll calculations, you can edit and delete those calculations because they're no longer being used. And that is after you archive, because they're no longer on any active transactions in this database because we archived. Also, another change that you may think about, having your employees take advantage of is the new W-4. So you probably know this, and if you don't, if they have an old W-4, their federal income tax information gets recorded here. The new W-4 that came out in 2020, the information goes on this tab. So you definitely would want to have them take advantage of that new form, just so that you're updated. So now that we're ready to, we've updated our system, we're ready to process 2023, and now we're ready to process W-2s, right, in the system. So if you closed, you can do it within the same environment. Since we archived, we're going to have to do it in our archived database, because that's where the records are housed, right? So 541 federal forms, again, it's going to tell me I'm in a archive database. And then you're going to want to go to the 2021. This hasn't been updated because we're still in 2021 here. But you're going to want to go to options, update your forms. I'm not going to do that now because sometimes that's a lengthy process, but you'll update your forms to make sure that these years, this will say 2022. I'm going to use the 2021 for this purpose, just for training, but yours will say 2022 when you update your forms. So we'll click Run Report on the 2022. This is kind of backwards, but we have 2022 payroll records in this company. So the system will go through Atrix to prepare the W-2s. You guys may be familiar with these forms, but here it's just a wizard. It'll walk you through it. You can test drive it. So if you want to kind of test it to see how is it going to work, you can absolutely run through the test. Doesn't hurt anything. You're not going to mess anything up. You can do it with 25 employees, the first 25, or test drive all of your employees, or say, no thanks, I want to start processing. So like this says, if you test drive, it's not going to save the information. So you can go ahead and click next. You want to process. It's just going to verify your company tax ID number that's in 7-1. This screen is going to ask you if you're processing for multiple EINs or just a single one. We're going to choose no, that you process for a single EIN. This will look at your, this is, can you hold on for 1 second? I'm sorry. I think I'm in the wrong, I am. Nobody told me that. I chose the wrong archive company. Nobody's paying attention. I'm just kidding. Okay. I'm going to go back to my W-2s. I know that I was in the wrong company because I had loaded the address in there prior to us jumping on the phone. So, and it wasn't in there before, in that last company. So this is the address that wasn't in the other one. That's how I knew I was in the wrong one. So make sure your company information is right. Again, this is pulling from 7-1. So if you look at it and you're like, where did that come from? It's in company information, so 7-1 tab. So are you filing for your employer, or are you a third party? That's what that's asking. You have to make sure that you have your other tax entities set up with their tax ID numbers, which if you've been using Sage, you already have this information in. This is a sample environment, so these numbers are not in because it's not live. So I'm going to quickly add them, just making up information there. So make sure that, I know it's state and local, but you want to make sure that information is updated. It won't let you proceed if it's not. And then you have a series of questions. Do you have employees who are exempt from Medicare or Social Security? Yes or no? We're going to say no here. Do you have members employees who are members of the clergy? Do you want to use control numbers? Do you have employees who elected to receive W-2 forms electronically? If you have, you can say yes. If you chose to use control numbers, you would put the control number here, whatever number you want to start with on your W-2s as a control number. What kind of taxpayer are you? Most of us are 941s. And then most of us, none apply as a kind of employer, unless you're a 501c, state, local, or federal government. If third-party sick pay applies, that box would be checked, and then you would get that notification that the income tax was withheld by that third-party sick pay. You would record it here. If you want to record the establishment number for box D, you can. And then if you have any other EIN numbers used this year, you can put that here. Also, if your business is terminating this year, you can check this box. Go to next. You can specify what type of Social Security number format you want on your W-2s. Do you want the whole number, or do you want it truncated with asterisks, or do you want X's? I'm going to use the whole number. So as I stated, it's a wizard. In the upper left corner of the screen is a blue box, and this is kind of the direction that you're going to be following. The system won't tell you what to do. This is saying verify employee information, and then below in the grid, the highlighted columns are what that box is referring to, or the information that it's referring to. So it wants you just to verify that the columns in blue are accurate. If they are accurate, you review them, everything looks good, you can click next. Here, there's a little green arrow, next. Verify additional employee information. Again, the columns are blue. We look at, statutory employee, retirement plan, those are those boxes that are on the employee. If you had checked them, these boxes would be checked. If you make a change here that you find, nope, that's not right, let me check the box, it's not going to update the employee record. So my recommendation would be to close out of this, go update what you need to, and then come back in here and run the W-2s from here. It will pick up your change. Click next if everything looks good. Now verify federal information. Do the federal wages, things look correct. Click next. Verify state information. These are the blue areas again. This is saying potential issues have been discovered and highlighted in yellow. If employees are exempt, you can continue without correcting. So all of these yellow items, payroll advance, workman's comp insurance, garnishments, these are all payroll calculations that have numbers in them. So if they've been included on somebody's paycheck, this is basically saying, do we want that to be part of their W-2? No. Typically, we don't want them to be included. So we'll continue without correcting. Now it says verify unassigned columns. So these columns that are all unassigned. If you say you want to add something, oh yes, I do want to add employer 401k contribution to their W-2, you can pick the box that you want to add it to. This is going to be box 12. And I'm going to say, this is not the elective deferral, but I'm just going to put it here, elective deferral under the section 401k. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Now this column will be added to box D12 on the W-2. If you have to report the employer paid health insurance on the W-2, you can select the box and the code that you want it to be assigned to on the W2, and then it will be reported. So anything that's unassigned, again, you have the opportunity to assign it to a box and a code on the W2. You don't need to if you don't want to. You can click next, and then the system will automatically, it will give you the warning and tell you that these are unassigned. Are you sure? Are you sure? It'll keep asking you. Well, you can continue without correcting. If you have questions, you can ask your CPA, or you can, go to the IRS website, look at Circular E, those type of things. Once you've done next, it takes you to this W2 1099 preparer option here for Atrix. So if you've signed up for Atrix, you already know about e-filing, you can click next. And then the system gives you the options for W2 printing. So if you bought the paper and you want to print them yourself, that's going to be under other options. You're going to print the employee W2s. You can choose to e-file your W2, or you can say, nope, I also want to print that myself, and I want to send this to the IRS. Notice if we choose those as options where we're printing them internally, we already bought the paper, we're doing it ourselves, we're stuffing envelopes, all of that jazz. The cost is $0 outside of the forms you bought. If you compare that to a complete W2 package, it's $122 for 50 employees for them to do everything for you. Stuff envelopes, mail them, print them and mail them, e-file your W2s, things like that. So we're not e-filing any. Notice it's $0. If they were e-filing, it'd be $1.15. So compare, pricing, things like that before you move forward. You see that it's $2.50 for them to print and mail. How many employees do you have? Figure out what that cost is, as opposed to your team buying the paper, printing them, stuffing the envelopes, buying the stamps. I think it's a lot more cost effective, and obviously for time saving purposes that you just have them e-file it. If so, you just click next, and then you can choose to have a PDF archive, which costs you $35. I would say no thank you, and I would actually save these records myself. And you can do that in this review. This right here is just telling you here are the sections that we're going to be reviewing. We're going to go through the e-file, we're going to go through the employee, the employer, and you can click next. Up here in the left-hand corner of the screen, notice that there are 3 reports. We're going to be looking at report 1 of 3. This is the employer W2. If you are printing them, this is where you're going to be printing your copy. So if you wanted to just print on paper, you can print final. So it says click print final and then click next step. You can print and save as a PDF if you wanted to, as opposed to printing on paper. That's what I always did, so that you can easily pull one up. Notice it's a 4-part report, and each one of these W2s is a separate employee. This is the employer report. On the employee, all of them are the same employee. Insert the 4-part perforated paper, tells you where to order it, and you can switch this to PDF. And then you can save it. Then it's going to go to report 2, which is the federal W2. Maybe. So this is the federal copy. You can print your copy, print copy, save it as a PDF if you want, so you have that, and then click next step. This would be to print the W2, the federal W2. I'm going to print it to Adobe or PDF. And now we're on report 3, which is the 941 federal W3, which is the summary of all of our W2s. Again, just like all the other ones, you can print a copy, go to next step. This is to print on that actual, W3 form if you bought the form. I'm going to print to PDF. And now the process is done. It's connecting me to the Atrix eFile Center because I chose to eFile. So it'll connect me to Atrix. I personally do not have an account, so I can't log in. If you have an account, you would log in and you would complete the process on the Atrix website. So once that's complete, if you ever needed to go back and make a change, you absolutely can, or reprint, you have your PDF copies, or you can go back through the process, believe it or not, and print that way. If somebody calls you and says, I don't have a copy, if you didn't save them as a PDF, which I recommend you do, you still could run this process again, and it's not going to hurt anything. To run your federal 941, you're also going to run that in here, your 941 report here for fourth quarter, and run report. Again, that's another report you can submit electronically. I just wanted to show you that if you chose to archive, you're going to have to do all of that in your archive database. If you chose to close, this is all taking place in your live environment. So any questions about anything we've covered? Okay. So now to advance to the next year in Sage, in your live environment, I'm going to go back to your live environment. You do have to have exclusive access in order to change the accounting period, which you probably all know, but if you didn't, you do have to have exclusive access. So we're going to go into 1/6 because we're ready to move our default posting period to January before we get started with, mainly January transactions. If I look at managed period availability, right now my default posting period is December. That's why it's bold. And if I toggle to 2023, only January is open. So when you make December your default posting period, it gives you a notification that January of 2023 is now open and available. Notice the rest of the year is not available. It will not become available until I make January of 2023 my default posting period, which is what we're going to do. So I click change period. I default this change period to 1 of fiscal year 2023, change period. It's going to run an audit, tell me that it was successful, perfect. And now it's asking me if I want to change the posting period to 1. Yes. Now it's going to say that periods 2 through 12 are available. So if I say okay, I go back to manage period availability. Now I'm in fiscal year 2023 and everything is available. If you don't already lock periods down for the future, I would recommend that you do that, especially December. It's easy if you're posting closing entries for December of one year to accidentally post in the following year. So if you lock them down, then nobody can post in them. So definitely recommend doing that. Save and then close, and now you're ready to go as far as 2023 is concerned. Next week we'll walk through archiving the general ledger, and if that's something that you want to take advantage of, you want to take the class so that you understand that process. I also wanted to walk through year-end resources that are available to you. Obviously, ETHOSystems and your consultant, if you have any issues, any questions, reach out. Underneath home and resources, product documents, year-end guide, there is a year-end guide in Sage. As I stated, it walks through the calendar year closing process, fiscal year process, archiving your data, in annual reporting for the ACA. So definitely check that out. Another option, and this is on the last page of the PowerPoint presentation, all of these resources that are available to you. You can always go to the knowledge base. So in Sage Support Knowledge Base. There is there's a Sage year-end resource area that you can walk through. SageCity.com year-end has a lot of information. I mean, you can click through each one of these. Sage University has courses you can watch. You know, there's always live chats going on in Sage City. If you haven't signed up for that, definitely recommend that you do. There's also Sage Q&A Live here, so definitely look at those resources. The last one is Sage City themselves. So let me go there. This one pops open. I had them all open. This is the Sage City year-end area. There's a year-end task timeline. You can click here that says recommended timeline of year-end tasks, and it opens up another tab that walks you through the year-end timeline. Q&A, you know, what do I need to do first type of thing. Also in one of these, there's a link, close year-end payroll enhancement. So this will walk you through everything we just covered. If you have any questions, you want to do a deeper dive, there's kind of Q&A here. So definitely read through that. Somebody asked a question, will Sage be updating the Sage 100 Contractor 2022 SQL year-end guide? It's currently dated 10/2022. I don't believe that they will. I think that it's updated. So the year-end guide. This is what you're referring to, Patrice? Let's see. Yeah, October 2022. So I mean, they may make changes to it, but I don't foresee that happening. Everything that you need to know is within that document and or Sage City, which I have a link on that final PowerPoint presentation, slide number 18, that will take you to this year-end task timeline from Sage City that you can walk through. I found it very helpful in preparing for this class. It covers everything you need to know. And again, if you don't feel comfortable with anything we've talked about and you're like, this is overwhelming, especially if you're new to Sage, first year running through this process, it doesn't hurt to reach out to your consultant and just have them, you know, be on the phone with you to kind of just guide you and hold your hand walking through the process. So if I'm your consultant, reach out ASAP because my schedule is filling up very quickly. Some of you have already reached out to me, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much. So I can plan for year end as well. Any questions before we end the call? We've covered everything. No problem, Amy. And I'm really sorry, you guys. I didn't know that everybody was on mute, and I don't know how to unmute you. So I will ask for next call next week that everybody is unmuted or can control whether they're muted or not, because it's super helpful to me if somebody can just unmute and ask the question, then I don't have to keep watching this chat. Yep, but no problem, Amy. I'll talk to you next week, everybody. If nobody has any more questions, that'll end this session. And again, you will get a copy of the recording and go ahead before I close out of this, print out that or save that PowerPoint presentation so that you have it. Thank you, guys.